It's Sharmini Pires on the Real News Network, and this is the Larry Wilkerson Report. As you know, Lawrence Wilkerson is the former Chief of Staff for the U.S. Secretary of State, Colin Powell, and he's currently an adjunct professor of government at the College of William and Mary. Thank you so much for joining us, Larry.
Thanks for having me, Sharmini.
Larry, one of the most interesting things about this election, this presidential election, is that Donald Trump on one hand and Bernie Sanders on the other hand is gaining and garnering the support of two extreme points of view in this country. Why is that happening?
I think there is a similarity at the top, if you will, and then as you do the analysis, it breaks down completely. First of all, in my party, the Republican Party, there are so many people in the base of that party who don't see the people they've sent to Washington in any guise as doing what they wanted to do. Basically reversing the Supreme Court on abortion, reversing all the equitable treatment that's happening now of the LGBT community, other issues like religion and so forth. They don't see them as having delivered. So they see Donald Trump as being a counter to that, and so they're responding to that. On the other side of the aisle, what you see is the Democratic Party having been brought by Bill Clinton, and now its flag bearer is Hillary Clinton, to the center, being just about like the Republican Party, the establishment party, if you will. And it doesn't matter whether it's establishment Democrats or establishment Republicans. That's at the expense of the more or less progressive wing in the Democratic Party. And you see that part of the Democratic Party responding to Bernie Sanders' message. At the same time, the majority of Americans who are independents, somewhere between 40 and 45%, are sort of moving to either side, which seems to respond to what they feel is necessary in the way of moderation and returning to actually governing ourselves. And they're trying to decide which one of those candidates possibly might offer the best opportunity.
And Larry, leading up to the New York primaries tomorrow, how do you think this is going to play out in the electorate?
I think it'll play out that Hillary wins New York, and I don't know, maybe substantially. And I think Donald Trump will win it for all the reasons we could all cite. She was a senator from there, he was a businessman from there, and so forth and so on. But I think what we're going to see is basically this is going to boil down to a November election between whomever the Republicans put up and Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton's going to be elected. I think what we're seeing is 26% of the population is Republican or self-identifies as Republican. That's about all that's going to vote for Donald Trump, or less. And you're probably going to get a lot of those independents voting for Hillary. But it's not going to satisfy what I just talked about, which is going to be increasingly a majority of the country. So what's going to happen is Hillary will be elected, but she'll be a one-term president. She'll only serve 4 years because she's an establishment candidate. And she's not going to satisfy either one of these wings of the established political system, if you will. And she's certainly not going to establish a majority of that 41 to 42% or so that's in the middle and independent. So we're going to have a one-term president, and then the election that precedes that one or comes after that one. That election is going to be the most important one probably since the election of 1896. We're going to have a seminal election that's going to set the course for this republic for the rest of this century. And it's going to have to be a real leader, and he or she is going to have to be followed by other real leaders to begin to set the course for meeting the challenges of this century, which are many. And I see that as being a much more important election than the one approaching us now.
And so the 2020 election, do you think Bernie Sanders will still be running?
I think his age will probably preclude that. I hope and pray to see some viable candidates step forward. Right now, there's no one identifiable. Candidates who will be willing to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and really move out to meet such existential challenges confronting us now as climate change and our budget problems, our governing problems, indeed, and the other huge problems that confront this country that I don't see any of the current candidates, other than Bernie Sanders, really intellectualizing. I don't see them admitting that they exist, first of all. And second, I don't see them presenting proposals to even remotely begin to meet them. This has got to be done. And so I think that election coming up is going to be seminal in the history of this country.
Larry, the youth that have come behind Bernie Sanders and working very hard in this campaign, obviously when you look around the country, it's massive, the support that he has. They're going to be left feeling disillusioned, and that this electoral processes doesn't include them. And we're going to have a situation where much of the young people in this country are feeling disillusioned by the process. What do you say to the people like that?
I've been immersed in this demographic for the last 11 years on 3 campuses intimately and all across the country, really. I've spoken in Iowa, Texas, Michigan. I've spoken all across the country and mixed with this demographic. I think in 4 years, they're going to be clearly 4 years older, that much more mature, and they're going to, in large part, drive this seminal election in 2020. And I think they're going to get the candidate they want. They've shown what they want. They've demonstrated what they want. I think that's what we're going to get, and we're going to get it in the form of an individual who can bring about some of this change, at least initiate it, start it, work with the Congress, and I hope they're going to throw out most of the existing Congress and bring a whole new one in. I suspect that's going to begin to happen this November. And we're either going to see a governance process that sets this country up to meet these challenges, or we're going to see more of the same, in which case I begin to say America fades from the scene and fades rather rapidly.
All right, Larry, thank you so much for your valued comments here.
Thanks for having me, Charmaine.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.